That's really good. Really good. Just thinking ahead to where next for the project. I think where do you see it evolve? Where would you like to see it evolve? I mean,
Right.
in the future.
I mentioned early on that within that very first public meeting in April 2009, people did say, what about other elderly, frail people and so on. And in a sense, another theme, if you like, that came out of that first meeting was, and we've used it regularly, is 7, 10, 12 miles is too far. Services, support, etc. should be local, the 4 mile. And here we don't have any residential care facility. We don't have any sort of nursing facility, whatever. The nearest nursing facility is 7 miles, nearest residential care is nearly 10 miles. So when somebody does go into care, we're actually separating the family. We're separating husbands and wives. Particularly in a rural area, this can be difficult because they want to spend as much time as they can with that person, perhaps. It's not always the case. Some families are really, you have to say, well, that's that. But mostly we find that family carers really do want to care for the person that they've loved all of those years, whether it happens to be as a partner or as a son or daughter or even a neighbour or whatever. And effectively separating them from their community is something we would like to avoid, or at least there should be the choice that people can be cared for in the sense of being, if they're elderly and frail, cared for within their familiar community. It should be a choice. I'm not saying you have to, but I think, it's not right that somebody has to leave that community to get the care that they need. And that led us on to thinking in terms of, well, is there something that we could have as a long-term vision? And does this make sense? And we came to the conclusion that we would like to see a next generation of care, health and social care, which would be integrated at the local level. And that would mean that you brought together in a suitable package the nursing, the residential, the specialist dementia care, if you like, because we could cope with a few. It doesn't have to be specialist. There's nothing in really seriously. There's nothing desperately clever about caring for somebody with dementia. It's about what's inside of you and how you communicate and common sense, even when symptoms are really quite serious. So bringing that together and the social care side, etc., we came to the idea that of what we might think of as a comprehensive care trust. So that from the village, the town and the surrounding villages, that we take responsibility for this. And we say, what do we need to do to care for people in their own home? What benefits would this bring? Well, it's continuity of care. It means that carers can continue to care even if they're not in their own home. It can encourage continued care within the home because you're providing the local support. It brings together the various strands of care so they're actually working together on a personal basis. And a success of that would be when Mary, who happens to be a personal carer, or in that strand, says to Peter, I think you shouldn't, I think, who happens to be the CPN, I think you should call in on Mildred. I think I'm a bit worried about her. Peter rings up Mary that night and says, yes, I've been to see her, etc. I think this is what we'll do, etc. So, right, so done job. No case conference, no massive bureaucracy. It's done because they each know how they're going to interact. They're not only in the same room, they're in the same community. And they know each other, they get to know each other, and together they really get to develop continuing relationships with the people who they're looking after. So bringing that lot together, and it's very easy to think of this as a bricks and mortar thing, but it's not. It's about an organisation. It's about true local integration of services, being supported when essential by the acute services and the acute intervention of social care. So you see how it works. It's that model which is upward thrusting rather than downward pressing. Classically, we look at the NHS and the local authorities and even the charities. We can build the model like this. Everything actually comes down and splays out from government, one way or another. That's where it comes from. That's why the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care is so important. But actually, what's needed is this. Here is the person who's an individual. And what we really need to try and do is focus the strands down on the individual. So the individual's not struggling to find which to do. It's happening, and we need to try and do this. Now that's a wiring problem, but there's no reason why the individual should need to know what the wiring is. What they should see is this, and what government should see is this. But it's how do you wire it? And local, truly local, and that means we're talking about proper neighbourhoods of 5, maybe 10,000, but not much bigger than that. A GP practice is group GP practice is about what I think of it as. That can make a huge difference. And we've done our lots of research and so on, etc., and built a model, business model, and we reckon it saves money. Not only does it improve, and we have a list. I won't go through it. We have a list, and we call it the top 20 benefits. Now that's just the start, because it actually makes sense. It's common sense for local people to care for local people, wherever possible, but not to deny the fact that you need the acute hospital. But there are many things that, if we have the right sort of facilities within a community, that we can avoid people going into hospital. If we know the patients, the individuals, etc., then maybe we can actually achieve the same objective within their own home, or temporarily they could move just down the road and receive that care. Alternatively, if they have to go into hospital, and we've all been there, I'm sure, and we're all going to go there again, then once they're stabilised, they've had their operation or their medical intervention, and they're sort of out of ITU, etc., they can come back. We hear about bed blocking and so on, but the only reason of bed blocking is because that capability of general nursing is not prepared within the community. And then that can then go back into the house, into the home. Moving towards that strikes me as being eminent common sense. But my father was, he went through the Second World War, and I think, they were a cynical lot in the Second World War. And one of the phrases that he used and I've never forgotten it. He says common sense was very rarely common practice. So, we need to sort of try to match how we provide the services to the needs of the person. And we can save money by reducing the number of attendances in hospital. We can save money by reducing the time spent in hospital. We can save money by improving the well-being. We can save money by prevention. Now, it just makes sense. However, it's a different model to the one we've got. In a sense, the NHS is a classic example of a system that was designed primarily for what it's not delivering, not being asked to do. It's a curative model. So what we're asking of the NHS is to say, and this is why it has been so wonderful, is you've got a problem, come and see us. We'll diagnose what your problem is. We'll give you a medical or surgical intervention. We'll put you back together in ITU if necessary, etc. We'll generally nurse you back into reasonable health, and we'll deliver you back to your community as good as you were. Repair, if you like, curative, and so on. But what we see within our elderly population, more often than not, is that people have, I think the expression is comorbidity and so on, but they develop as they get older, and I'm a classic example, they develop medical kleptomania. Here, there's a bit over there, oh, yes, I'll have a bit of that, etc. And the pill count rises. And none of these ailments, if you like, are terminal. They're not in themselves going to kill you, but they are uncomfortable, they're debilitating, they reduce your quality of life, and you need help and support, not to cure them, because you can't, but to make them livable with, to improve the quality of life without, and this is a difficulty, without saying, making the saviour of your life the ultimate. No, it's not there to extend your life, it's there to make what life you've got as good as possible. It's not going to make it perfect, but and it's that model, the palliative care model, that needs to be present, as well as the preventative care model. Now we can see that, if you like, the statutory services have over the years done a brilliant job of the curative and the crisis intervention. I know they're short of money and it's and resources, but they have been great servants of our communities and our population. But they're now having to cope with a model of need, a structure of need, which doesn't match what they're doing. So it's a bit like a company trying to make something who's always made something like widgets, and you're now trying to use that company to make Wotsits. It's difficult and it's highly expensive, which is where many of the problems that we see in the NHS and the local authorities arise. And what we need to do is to try and make sure that we use those facilities as little as possible, and that means palliative care in the community, that model, and preventative care in the community. And we believe that we can do an awful lot by practically integrating in the actual community, and that is integrating between the professionals, the actual people who do the job. I hope that makes sense to you.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Really good. The challenges of pulling you.
They're not to solve the world, but we do have a responsibility, to pay back the goodwill and the support that we've had from various authorities, so on, particularly people in those authorities. You know, they get a bad press, but you know they're doing the best it can be. You know, in difficult circumstances. And how some of them stay cheerful, I really don't know. I really don't. I see it.
Challenging,
I
isn't
see
it?
it. So
Yeah.
you know, so we try also to give back in terms of what we do in terms of research, etc., and trying to encourage, or at least set up the means by which we can encourage other communities